morning, everyone. Welcome to our session incorporating the online bookstore and library into the online community. We have a panel of experts here today to talk about this topic. It's a very important topic because your online students need the same resources available to them that your ground students have. So they need access to the library, to research, to their books easily. So today we have with us, we have Randy Jones on the right from MBS Direct. He is the Regional Sales Manager at MBS Direct, which is a provider of course content including new and used textbooks, supplemental material, e-content, and free resources. We have Eric Richardson, who is an Assistant Professor of Management and Marketing and Dean of the School of Graduate and Professional Studies at King. And we have John Burch, who is the Dean of Library Services at Campbellsville University in Kentucky. So they will be talking to us today about each of these topics. We'll start with Randy.
Good morning, everybody. Well, I'll give you a little bit of background about my organization. So I'm with MBS Direct. We're the official ebook and textbook partner for the Learning House. We're actually partnered with Marygrove. MBS Direct's been around for about 20 years, and about 7 years ago we realized, well, if we don't get into ebooks real soon, we're going to go from the market leader to out of business. So if you can imagine this warehouse space that we have, 330,000 square feet of over 4 million books, and we're trying to decide what we're going to do with it once the ebook revolution really takes hold. Ice skating rink, hockey field, we haven't quite figured it out yet. But I'm happy to answer any questions on ebooks. We have our own ebook solution where we've partnered with about 80 publishers to be able to provide ebooks on one platform so your students and your IT folks don't have to learn Pearson's ebook solution, Incengage's ebook solution, and Inkling. We'd be able to bring everything to one central location. And once we introduce ourselves, I'll be happy to answer the questions on ebooks.
Hi, I'm Eric Richardson. I'm with King College. Like Rachel said earlier, I'm the Dean of Graduate and Professional Studies. I think the area probably that I have the most knowledge about, or the expertise that I'm bringing, is probably about building your course without using a textbook, I guess. One of the challenges that we run into is building a good course that lives a long life cycle, basically. So as a student of online learning and as also a professor of online learning and an administrator of online learning, I've witnessed a lot of different methods that colleges and universities have used basically to basically not incorporate a textbook maybe, but maybe incorporate library resources or other content. So I'll be happy to address those questions.
My name's John Burch, and I should probably at least just to keep the record straight is, although I'm a librarian, I just finished as Dean of Distance Learning at Campbellsville University, and I'm also an instructor, so I've kind of looked at this, basically from a standpoint of being an administrator as well as being a librarian. And, as the one thing that really strikes me about libraries in general is it's the most overlooked resource on every campus that seems to do online learning. One of my favorite things to do is whenever I talk to people, is ask them, well, where are your librarians at in this process? And you'll be stunned how many institutions never considered their librarians. But if you think about your librarians, they have been dealing with using electronic resources for far longer than anybody else on campus. We've been dealing with this since the mid-'80s. We've been doing bibliographic instruction, teaching students how to study electronically and everything else. But, and your library probably has far more resources than you would ever imagine. But instead people tend to go jump on the internet, look for free materials, go try to construct course packs. Odds are, if you've got a well-developed library, a lot of your course pack materials are probably already on your campus and available. At my institution, for instance, we spend over $100,000 a year on electronic resources. And it astounded me, even on my own campus, when I would suggest it to a faculty member. You ever looked at this database? It's kind of like a new novel idea to them. And so that's kind of my contribution to this discussion is, there's some things your institution can do to take advantage of what you already have. At the same time, it probably takes a reframing of what a library is. I suspect if I asked everyone around the room about their school's library, they're going to tell me about the physical library on their campus, that they can physically see, and have no clue what their capabilities really are. And this is true even on my own campus, which means I've been, I'm a failure as I've been keeping the best kept secret on campus, a very good secret. Our library at our institution is roughly, 130,000 volumes, maybe 400 periodical journals, and so that's what everybody sees. And when they hear Montgomery Library, that's what they think of. In reality, we have closer to 300,000 volumes because 200,000 of them are all online. We have over 25,000 full-text journals and those types of resources already on our campus that are accessible through a proxy server, but nobody sees that, and so and that's where their course packs are, and that's where everything potentially is. So, so that's one thing just to consider, that as long as you have a proxy server and you have electronic resources, odds are you already have access to what you need to adequately run your online program without a huge expenditure of new money.
So we could jump into ebooks if you like. A few things when you're analyzing different ebook solutions. Think of it as a non-traditional student. Some of the non-traditional students, they don't own tablets, or they've never played with a tablet. They don't have the latest Mac. You want to go into your ebook and then open up and say, well, this is really simple to highlight. I click and I drag. When analyzing a few different solutions out there, a lot of them are really pretty, right? They have nice pictures, they have nice videos. Apple's ebooks take about $100,000 to make each ebook. It's really pretty. But does it serve the purpose for your institution? Another thing to analyze is how the school will be able to manipulate the book. There's specific solutions out there that the school will actually be able to go into and change in a way or add to. I'm a faculty member, I'm reading my New York Times in the morning, and I see an article and I say, this is perfect for my course 3 weeks from now. Well, is there any way to link that into your LMS or add that directly into the book? And at the end of the course, will you be able to get any feedback from your ebook provider, your ebook solution? Or even in the middle of the course, Susan's an A student and gets a C on this test. How come? Well, can you go into your provider and get data such as the average student in this course spent 3 hours on chapter 4 and Susan spent 25 minutes. Also a nice way to evaluate students at the beginning of a course and see how successful they're going to be and point them in the right direction if they're not spending the adequate amount of time in the text or the ebook. Our director talks about it all the time. He's been teaching for 30 years. And in a textbook, he doesn't actually know if any student has ever read a word of his textbook. He knows that they're staring at it, but have they actually ever read a word? And some of the newer ebook solutions allow you to actually see, well, they spent X amount of time, they clicked here, they watched this video, they interacted. It was more than a textbook. It was a solution to help them learn the materials for the course. So those are the things that I feel are important in a textbook. The highlighting is great. But if you have an ebook that you can't highlight in, it's really behind the times. It's something that's expected at this point. Does anybody have any questions about tablets versus PCs versus laptops, or is that not something that's coming up on your campuses?
We're preparing. We're right at the cusp of making it, because I can say something here. Oh, I should be on.
Yeah, that's right. Luke can go first.
Thank you. Good idea.
We're at the cusp of getting ready to purchase some type of iPad, something for
Sure.
our students.
Sure.
And we're wondering, looking down the road at what's coming, because obviously, Samsung's getting into the business, and there's a lot of new players coming in to compete with Apple
Yeah.
and National
Sure. I have an iPad. I love it. It's $700-800. So if as an institution you're looking to provide or include into a textbook and technology fee or something along those lines, I'd really recommend you look at everything. I mean, Google's coming out with a new tablet. It's going to be $199. So if you're looking to provide something for your students, really take the time to examine all these different solutions. The Apple product has some really great apps, and they're really easy to use. But the Android products do the same thing. So I like my iPad. I wouldn't say anything negative about it, but if it's a financial decision, I'd look. This Google product sounds like it's going to be a really great tablet for $200.
Let's keep going with that too. So, Dr. Green talked about yesterday that when you require, you can't assume your students are tech savvy, especially at like a graduate level like we approach. But also undergrad students that can't afford, like you talked about, they can't get to the technology.
Sure.
So talk about that a little bit more. And if we require an e-reader or a laptop, of course, you started to go there, Randy. As long as they can access to their laptop, even their desktop. Some people will just have a desktop. Some of our students are mostly teachers. They might do their work at school. We have to think about who our audience is. Is it okay to require that they have some kind of reader
Certainly.
to go to the e-textbook and all the e-articles and access the library where you can get tons of stuff. So talk about that.
Sure. And I've seen different institutions go in different directions. It's becoming popular to do a BYO, bring your own device, bring your own laptop, tablet, whatever it is, which is fine because most ebooks that are cloud-based are going to be the same, whether you're on a tablet, whether you're on a PC, your mom's 1989 PC, or your brand new Mac, whatever it is. But there are a lot of institutions that are going the textbook and technology fee route where they can make a little bit of money and at the same time provide everybody with the same materials, the same tablet. And for $200, if you spread that out over a year-long period, I guess I'm not sure how all the billing infrastructures work for all the institutions, but you certainly can spread out that fee. And your IT people will like you a lot more if you're only dealing with one piece of machinery.
One thing that you might consider is if you're thinking about like spreading the cost out over the tuition is, I think you mentioned earlier about doing technology fees, like having students pay a piece of a technology fee or course materials fee per course over the entire course of the program. So they're not being hit with the cost up front or, having to pay that, even if you chose to go the iPad route or something, having to drop $600 or $700 for the program. That cost is kind of spread out through the program. A lot of institutions do that.
I think just as a cautionary measure, something at least needs to be considered is that the minute you make a commitment like that, you're probably committed for quite a while to that technology. And so, it'll take away your future flexibility as new technologies come available because you can't just change your mind in 2 years and move to another platform. And, with so many things moving to handheld devices, such as phones and stuff like that, I would be very leery about sticking with a tablet format because already, as great as the iPad was, they're already now coming out with this micro iPad, because people are unhappy about those things, so, once you commit to a technology, you're kind of stuck with it.
Yeah, and if I can add one thing, one reason that we chose MBS Direct to be our provider was because of the range of options. So instead of making something mandatory like an e-reader, they have the availability of used books, of ebooks, brand new books. They have buyback for their students to consider that range of options that your students need instead of making an e-reader mandatory. And the way that they make it look is that it's your online bookstore. They theme it the way we theme your Moodle portal, so it looks like it's your online bookstore. But they were the most cost effective for students and they had strong buyback and e-reader options. So, you know, maybe it's something you start looking at, just look at the numbers of how many people are getting that before considering the e-reader.
Thank you, Rachel. And I'm trying to be careful not to pitch MBS.
No, but I wanted to
I
say why
appreciate
we
it.
chose that.
And to Rachel's point, we have two different ways of providing course materials to students. One is through a virtual bookstore. We'll brand an online bookstore for your institution. And when your students go in and say, well, I'm part of Philosophy 101, they'll go in and it'll show them, do you want to buy new, used, rental, or ebook? So if you have that type of clientele that you're not sure if they're going to want an ebook or not, well, we can give them the option one way or another. And once the ebook is purchased, it's brought right into your LMS, so it can be accessed with a single sign-on.
Right, and the other thing you have to think about as an institution, and I'm not opening a can of worms here, it's for, you can attend definitely Jim Dunn's session on the financial aid piece, but you also have to think in terms of, is your financial aid staff packaging students quickly enough that they can get students in time, they can get books in time to start an 8-week course? Because if they're not getting books shipped to them until the week after a course starts, because you have open enrollment all the way up to a day a course starts, your student in an 8-week course is lost. So having the options of being able to download an ebook is very important when you're going into the online market because of the financial aid packaging, and maybe your school hasn't caught up to that yet, where you're doing the packaging fast enough that they can get their books fast enough. So you also have to put that into the equation too when you're looking at this.
Rachel makes a great point. If your distance learning student in Detroit enrolls into the course the day the course starts, they might not get their physical book for 3 days. You buy an ebook, it's there. Yeah.
Right, and a lot of our students too, and students of other universities that I've been with, one of the other things where that comes in handy is a lot of students don't choose to go the bookstore route. They choose to purchase it through another third party,
Right.
you know, with the promise of getting the textbook in a day or two, and it turns into like a week. So I've had a lot of students that have actually had to then go turn around and purchase the ebook in order to get it within time to be able to complete course assignments and so forth.
Right.
And, you know, another thing that I think is a best practice for course design, especially during the first week of a course, to kind of, I guess, combat that issue, is when you think about designing courses, making that first week kind of flexible where it's not so dependent on the book. So a lot of times I'll have students that'll run into the issue of, well, I don't have the book yet because it is a course that requires like a physical textbook. And so we provide them the option to complete whatever assignment it is using, you know, library-based resources or journal articles or whatever it may be.
Thank you. This is a great conversation because sitting there, I'm thinking in terms of the addition of technology into your campus and virtual bookstore. We're just going to a virtual bookstore this summer, so we've made that switch. Not MDS, but you know, another company, but MDS we looked at. Good company.
Thanks.
But the question I have goes back to the iPad. Is that I'm thinking we're purchasing the iPads for our faculty first, and if our faculty have the iPads, is it still advantageous if we were to then leave more of a flexible option for students with whether it be e-readers, iPads, the new whatever fangled whatevers are coming down the road? Because with the iPads, we're looking at more of an instructional technology. And I'm stuck on this because so much of this is integrated. You know, I mean, it's as I'm standing here thinking, the decisions about technology and books and ebooks and regular books and all of that, everything, it's a much more complicated decision today, you know, in making these moves, because it's not just simply, you know, ordering a book. It's really a pretty heavy decision, you know, that can be stuck with for years. So I guess the question is, faculty one kind of modality, which we will be stuck with for years, and then being more flexible with students, does that still meet with ebooks and where you see students going and the needs of schools and online and all of that?
Yeah, I recommend being cautious about pagination. If if you remember the first couple of Kindles, it would tell you you are 34% of the way done with the book, not what page you are. So if you've got your faculty member sitting there and saying, all right, well, I'll turn to page 37% of the way done with the book, and it's not going to work. A lot of the solutions now are very cautious about pagination. Even as you increase the text size, it's reflowable, it's cloud-based, and there's still that breaking point which will allow your students to say, okay, I am on page 38. Faculty member said use page 38. I know I'm in the right place. But not every solution has sort of caught up to there. And another thing I'd be cautious about is the teacher materials, the ancillary materials that are provided typically from the publisher. Our CEO was in a meeting with one of the major publishers about 8 months ago and said, what are you doing for teacher materials for your ebooks? And they went, oh yeah, teacher materials. Good idea. Yeah, so that the publishers are such in a hurry to get these ebooks out because of the demands that the ancillary materials are sort of falling behind.
I think that's something that you have to keep in mind about your market going online while you are serving some of that 18 to 24-year-old market with gen eds, all of those things. You're also looking at a non-traditional student who might not be comfortable with some of the technology. Okay, and I mean, I am not in that age range, and I'll tell you, I have tried Kindle, I have tried downloading books on my iPad, and when I'm trying to learn material, I still prefer getting my Post-it note tabs, my 3 different color of highlighters, a pencil, and my textbook. So you have to consider learning styles too. How do people learn? And giving them options, because you're going for that non-traditional student. So you might have a 40-year-old who's coming back to get a master's degree and is not going to be comfortable learning from an iPad. So they want to order their textbook, or they want to go on the library's website and download some of their resources, and they're going to print them off on their HP at home, right? And then they're going to highlight and do everything. So you've got to consider your market in online education.
Let me also add, as you're thinking about all this technology and, empowering the faculty with fancy devices and everything else, is that what I think you need to remember is what are the computer capabilities of the computers your students are using. I live in a rural area, right, and there are still places in my county that have dial-up. Right. I can have all kinds of technology all over my pages, but if nobody can download it, there's a real problem. One of the things that I see, I also teach BP 101, so I've had contact with a lot of faculty and other institutions, is that because their campus computers and their computer labs have all kinds of fancy capabilities, they get frustrated with their online students because the online students can't pull it up, and it loads in 2 seconds on a campus computer. Right. And, they don't realize it on the back end of it, of the student at home. They may be running a machine that's 8 years old. So while you're running off embracing all these fancy technologies, the only capabilities that matter is that of the students.
Absolutely, and I mean, that's another thing that, having worked with the Learning House for 4 years now, I'll tell you that while we push our schools to have stronger instructionally designed courses for online delivery, you have to be cautious of how much bandwidth some of the things you're putting in your course requires. Because if you do have somebody who's working from dial-up, or you're requiring them to be in a synchronous session that is going to keep kicking them out because they don't have the technology, it's going to prevent them from learning, and it's going to be a deterrent from them continuing online. So, all of these are options that you can do without limiting the student. So they can access the library, but they don't need the bandwidth, or they don't have to download an ebook. They have an option of ordering an actual textbook. Yes?
Could you speak to the best way to teach an online learner to use the library?
That's a great question. It would be coming from one of my faculty members.
I didn't know that. That's funny.
Well, to be honest with you, like I said, I just stepped down from distance ed, but at our institution, what we did was when we created our Center for Distance Education, half the staff was actually librarians. And we have one of the librarians actually still on the staff, and his job is basically to work with both faculty and students, you know, on not only course design, but also with library type resources. Because it is a completely different market, requires a completely different different way of accessing resources, you know, and also, and the reason I said faculty is because a lot of the resources are being embedded into the actual courses. One of the things that I like to do is you know, we've got among some of our databases, we've got some music databases that actually stream music performances not only in audio but in video, and we try to put links and stuff into that. And one of the reasons I think it's important to have a librarian in there is because of all the copyright issues that are related to online instruction. You know, as you start looking for resources out on the web and everything else to add to your courses, you know, I'm not sure if you are aware of this, but if it's a copyright violation from the original person and, you know, you download and add it to your class, you just made a secondary violation yourself of the copyright law. You know, so you're kind of taking a lot of risk by just going out there downloading quote free materials. You know, the nice thing about our situation is that with our databases and stuff, they're all the copyright stuff is taken care of, and, you know, so we can freely use those materials. But, you know, honestly, I don't think our faculty realize they're talking to a librarian. It's probably best kept that way. You know, just being honest about it. You know, they think it's another faculty colleague on the other end, because, you know, just to be honest, a lot of campuses, librarians are looked at as not necessarily faculty. We're in that quasi area, you know, but it makes it much easier for them to deal with their, you know, the coordinator of online education, not realizing it's actually a librarian who's working with them and to coordinate all this stuff.
And I'll tell you that having been in a position where I work starting new schools out on online, you know, the school is always ready to jump on the curriculum piece. Let's start building courses, okay? But they don't think of all the secondary things that are really primary issues about supporting that online student. So the bookstore, the library, how are they going to get oriented to the bookstore, the library? How do they know how to do their research? How are the online instructors going to be taught or oriented on copyright issues, like we said, because some of them will just start uploading course materials without having sought permission from the textbook publisher because they could do it in their classroom, right? So there's a whole new set of rules that apply that we need to be looking at when we start out of school, so these students and instructors don't misstep from the beginning. So one thing that I would say that it's not easy to do, but it's worth the time investment, is to, and Midway, Joey here is from Midway, they created these incredible resource centers out of the gates for every program that they enroll their students in, and it's a resource center that has the instructors' photos linked to their email address. These are program specific, and then it has links to library databases that you'll use most frequently in that program. It orients them to research. I mean, it gives them writing standards. I mean, it's a really incredible way to orient the student to their needs outside of just the class. I don't know if you can speak to that a little more, Joey.
I think that you touched on a lot of it. The nice thing is that it gives people an easy way to get into our online library portal, where people will be able to find stuff, you know, that they can get articles to JSTOR, things like that. And, you know, if they're in a psychology class, if that's the major, they'd be able to just see the psychology section, and they have all their
these resource centers, I mean, they took a long time to build up front, but once they're built, they're built. I mean, you build one for every program that's online, and then at the beginning of, if you have cohort models, you just enroll that cohort in that resource center. But, you know, the important takeaway message of this is that they had to work with Bookstore, program coordinator, librarian to build these, so no one was left out of that conversation. That's what I see frequently is I go to a campus and I walk into a bookstore. Who are you? What's Learning House? We're doing online. Or the librarian. I didn't know we were doing online. How am I supposed to help them if they call? So they're not included in the conversation in the initial building of these online programs. Did you, as a program coordinator, start those conversations early?
Yeah, I mean, we all work together pretty well. And one of the things that I wanted to mention, I wrote down earlier on an earlier note that kind of feeds into this conversation is one of the things that we're doing with one of our programs, which has been pretty successful, is we're actually embedding the librarians into the courses. So the librarians are learning the course to support both the faculty, and they're engaging in the conversation with the students as the course is going on, and they're actually doing the facilitation right there in the course. So they see an assignment coming up because, you know, they've worked with this course several times, and then they start to engage the students in dialogue. Okay, I see this assignment coming up. You know, what are the questions that you have? You know, do you know about these resources that are available to you electronically through our library that may help you in, you know, completing this assignment? And that's been pretty successful. We also have dedicated library staff that work specifically with our online students and online faculty members as well, so that they're getting both sides of the questions and so forth.
Let me also make one more point as I'm thinking about it. Another reason to include your librarians and such is that the way that most libraries make purchases these days, especially of electronic resources, is through consortiums. You know, I can listen to the gentleman here from Midway, and I have a ballpark idea already, you know, what his resources are, because, you know, I'm friends with his director. We all, you know, work in the IQ consortium together, and, you know, and with the people from King College, we're in a consortium with them too, and we make a lot of purchases. You know, our libraries in many ways, you know, especially with King and Campbellsville, are all tied together through the Appalachian College Association. We're already organized as a central library through the Bowen Central Library of Appalachia. We work in consortiums, you know, so when we're negotiating contracts, you know, we're not negotiating, you know, as Campbellsville University with our FTE, we're negotiating as a 75,000, you know, person FTE school, you know, and getting great deals, you know. So if there's resources you need, you know, to support your online programs, if you take it to your librarian, there's probably a much lower price available through the consortiums that we can start getting these resources. You know, one of the things that, you know, talking about library resources for to support your various programs, we just got a product called LibGuides, which I would recommend for all your libraries. Very cheap, but allows you basically to have a very sophisticated looking website designed just for supporting really online type programs. And, you know, we got it through one of our consortiums, you know, so odds are your library director, even if you're fresh into the online world, is probably already acclimated to the library side of things through discussions at consortium type meetings, because you have to keep up with what the other institutions are doing, because you're all in it together at some level. You know, libraries are much more, you know, are not competitors like other avenues of campus are. You know, trade secrets are kept, you know, just about every other part of your institution, you know, are kept close, because you don't want to give a competitor a competitive advantage over you. But with libraries, we tend to work together for mutual benefit. So there's probably a lot of knowledge in your library director, even if you're new to this, that you may not have realized.
Yeah, and you brought up what I was going to ask about, and also my example. I was a grad student, and then I taught at a large research university on the west side of Michigan, and my professors role modeled as a grad student. They would bring the librarian into the course, a dedicated distance learning librarian, and they taught us the resources, and we actually got to click on them. And one of the ways they sold it was, we're paying, your tuition is paying a lot of money to have these resources. So that, that always kind of resonated with me. But it was explicit. That's my point, is it was explicitly brought to us that these resources are, and we can do that online. And that was all face to face. And then now I'm a professor for them too, online, and I'm going to bring the online, and I think we can embed that in our courses, like the gatekeeper courses, that you interact with that librarian, even if it's already a video, but you learn about the resources explicitly. And then my other thing was, when you click on Mary Grove College is where I am now, when I open up that I'm going to go look for journal articles on a specific topic, does the link say, at my institution it said Western Michigan University, so it got me to the free, because we already subscribed to it and we didn't break any copyrights, because some of those journal connections will try to sell you the article. Yes. But a lot of times you could find a dissertation or something free because Western owned access to that. So right. Is that something we have to explicitly build into our courses as well, that you're going to go through Mary Grove, who's part of a consortium, that we can get to it for free?
Yeah, John did that.
No, yeah, we what you need to do is get a proxy server.
Right.
And what the proxy server will do is basically put a gateway up that, as long as you know the username and the password, it doesn't matter if you're sitting in your hometown or outer Mongolia. If you have internet access, it will, if you type that in, will recognize you as a student of that institution and give you all that access. And that's far better than trying to remember 40 different passwords, which was the way we had to do it beforehand. Proxy servers are really cheap, but they're worth their weight in gold.
Yeah.
And to add on to that, when we add resources to the online course, the faculty of the course writers that are doing that are adding the permalinks to the course that are going directly to the materials. The students that are on campus are able to, if they're taking an online course with us, go directly in, basically. For the students that are off campus, they're going through the proxy server, but we have all of our, learning management systems, library, student portals, everything connected together where it's one single sign-on, basically. Same username and password for everything. So the student basically doesn't have to remember like 50 different things in order to be able to access those resources.
And that's why it's so important and what's great about Moodle is you have these resources blocks. You want everything as contained as possible. So you want your campus to implement single sign-on, then we help you authenticate on our end, put all the resources in the resources blocks, so they're just one click away from the library, from the online bookstore. So all of those things are right there at their disposal, because the research has shown, and this is with the marketing piece of enrollment, people get frustrated if it's 5 clicks, something's buried. So, having that library block, online bookstore block right there, and that's something we can help you implement with, working, if you want to work with MBS Direct, that will help you work with them to then put that link to that bookstore right there.
As an advocate of ebooks, I feel like I do have to talk about best case scenario here, because we've talked a lot about why things may not work. But if you do go ahead and you've got your ebook embedded right there in your LMS, single sign-on, without going through those 5 clicks, you can get your ebook, launch it, open it up. You're a visual learner, you're reading about cell division, and you're completely lost, but there's a video right there embedded in your ebook, and you watch the cells divide. It's extremely powerful. And you didn't have to do that by putting a textbook down, walking over to your computer, going back and forth trying to find the link. You've got it, it's right there. You don't lose your page in the book. Further on in the book, you can link right to your library resources. If there's something else that's a resource in your library that's going to help you understand what's in that text. When it works, when you have the bandwidth, when you've done your due diligence about devices, it's a beautiful thing that your learners are going to love, being able to be right there. And if they're on a tablet and they're not used to it, well, they may have to use that type of technology in their field. So it could be a good thing that you teach them to learn these things, because tablets are not going away.
And I don't disagree at all, and I didn't mean to give the impression. I'm just, somebody who went through grad school with my textbooks, and there were no ebooks, so it's more habit for me. But when you talk to Jim Dunn about tapping into that international and military-friendly market, ebooks are not an option. I mean, you're going to have to tap into that and have it available because of deployment, because of shipping internationally, all of those things. So those are things that you have to consider if you're trying to grow your online programs, especially to those two arenas, because they need that capacity to quickly get their textbooks. And much more people in that age range of the 18, 20 to 24-year-old are very comfortable with that technology. They prefer that technology. That's how they read for fun. They download novels on their iPhone, on their iPad. So,
and for the folks who have had to ship through customs, they certainly will appreciate the ease of an ebook.
From the student perspective, two of the things that I liked most about ebooks was the ability to search versus having to flip. You could search, a common term or whatever and see where it is specifically in the entire book at one period of time. The other thing is, as a frequent traveler, for the student that, travels a lot, specifically even with the military or international students, having the ability to not have to travel with books and pay for, having to also pack those in their luggage, or if they forget something, their ability to access whatever they're needing to access wherever they're at, provides a lot of added convenience for them.
and I'll tell you, I mean, just from the Learning House perspective, if you think about all these permalinks and library resources, as part of the advantage of working with Learning House is the term preps we do before courses start is we go into every course and make sure these links are still functioning, that they're still linking to the right places. It's part of our quality check of every course. So somebody doesn't open up a course and suddenly all the links are broken that was taught last year. These links are an important part of the course and the resources we have. And I wanted to address a question that you had about building your own book. What we really call that, I mean, we operate on a curriculum model of textbook agnostic. So meaning we suggest that you adopt textbooks for every course, but you build the content without a textbook. So the textbook content, the content of your course, the core content is independent of the textbook. So then when a new version comes out, a new edition, you can just update the textbook materials instead of having to change the core of your course. But what I'm thinking of when you're saying building your own textbook, we at Learning House work with you to take your lecture materials and put them in ebook templates in every lesson. So that way they have an ebook template that they pull up that's made to look like the branding of your school. And so the lecture material is looks like your brand. And then we put in the textbook resources around it. So then it's really easy from semester to semester. If they've got a great new edition that you like the materials better, you don't have to overhaul your entire course. You just change the textbook and the resources. So that would be my suggestion, to work with us to help you build ebooks around your lectures and then supplement with the textbooks.
And those are stored on your own server, right?
Yes.
We just put the link on our.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Sure.
Can you incorporate, like if you do the, build your own ebook, can you incorporate videos with it? Can your lectures not be like text and videos and pictures?
There can definitely be pictures, and I believe there can be links to embedded videos, yes. Mm-hmm.
And the link to the embedded videos is really the way to go. And I know the Apple books have the videos right there embedded, and again, they're very pretty, but they're not always functional if you have to download the book The
Right.
size of the book is just tremendous. It's going to take over the person's device. You get 5 books downloaded on your hard drive, and your hard drive's done. So the ability to link out
Right.
is really the way to go.
One thing else I wanted to step back for a minute and mention that when John was talking a few minutes ago that I thought about the importance of the librarian professor conversation, and even at the dean level conversation when you're writing courses or developing courses. One of the things that I've run across in my role is finding out what I can think of one particular course where students were having to purchase materials, cases, and articles that we were already purchasing through the library as well. So, that's one of the concerns for students is the cost of materials. And I know our librarians have a conversation with the deans and faculty as well in terms of what resources are you using so that the library staff is not paying out money for things that we're not using anymore, so they can allocate those funds to something different or something else. And that's another positive thing of having that entity present, during the process to see what's being used and what you're using most frequently.
Yes.
You both are talking about something that concerns me, and you were saying you recommend always ordering a textbook. Well, in my field, textbooks are horrendously expensive, and if I'm only going to use about half of it, I really don't want to have the students buy it. And I know that a couple of the publishers are now doing an ebook or even a bound copy, a paper-bound copy of various chapters from various places in their books and making a unique person-bound or course-bound publication, whether it be or paper. And
I'm not
I
saying
think
that every.
that's
Right.
like you were saying in terms of cost.
Right.
This quarter, I am actually not using a text for a particular course I'm teaching, because every single one of them has so much more than I need for an undergraduate course.
Right.
I mean, if I was teaching a graduate level, majoring in its community health, then
Right.
I could have them buy the book because it's got, more than one would ever need as an
Right.
undergraduate.
No, I'm not saying let me clarify. I don't feel like every course needs a textbook. I'm saying build your courses to be textbook agnostic.
And I
Use
like
the
that.
textbook as
Which is
supplement.
essentially what I've had to do.
Right. What I'm saying is that from the textbook side, give them options if you are going to require one about if it's ebook, if it's used, new. So they have options financially, they have options in technology. I mean, I think that students just need some options before we jump off the next bridge of requiring everybody to buy a Kindle, buying a iPad, right? So it depends on the subject matter too. There are some subjects that you absolutely need a textbook, no question. And then there are some, it's up to the instructor. I'm just saying don't build your courses around a textbook because you're going to have to overhaul it again and again and again.
That's where I see the value of the library to provide links that will not be broken, that
Right.
we refer to. Like I'm doing the same thing. I teach statistics, and I'm not buying a statistics book this year. I'm not requiring a statistics book because there's not a thing hot that's not out there on the internet. And so the last statistics book was like $175, and I feel guilty.
Well, my concern, as I talk to my colleagues, I work with the history department, as an instructor, and because for assessment reasons, we have a common textbook, common goals and objectives and everything else, because we've got SACs in a couple of years, so we have to worry about those things. But if I had my druthers right now, I'd ditch the textbook entirely and do it strictly on library readings and library databases, because we've got a database that's got all the videos basically at the History Channel and all them used too. So I could put together a great introductory course using, video, using readings and stuff like that, and not having any other added expense to the students. But, our own institution's policies are right now preventing that, and while I understand the reason, it is somewhat frustrating just knowing that every 2 years it seems that the publisher of my textbook is publishing a new edition. The paperback's $100, and it's this highway robbery of the students, and you can easily fix it, but because of assessment reasons, the way we've designed it, you really can't do anything about it. So,
And that was another big part of our decision making in choosing MBS Direct, is because we're a student-centric company. We're thinking not just about the instructor needs, but we're thinking about the student needs. And so having a company that provided lots of used options if a textbook is required to help save the student money, that had the highest rate of buyback for the students. That's important because a lot of instructors are still relying on those big, huge textbooks, and that's just the way they're going to keep going. So having that cost-effective possibility for the student was important for us to have that as a preferred provider.
And
Yes.
a quick plug, if you don't
So-
mind, while we're talking about the cost of books and you're talking about buyback, the buyback program is, we'll use a $100 book as an easy example. All used books are 25% off. So you buy the used book for $75, and if we know that book is being readopted, we'll buy it back for 45% of the new